just wanna dance with you, mommy. I put my hands on your body. Don't be shy, don't you worry. Too much juice, too much sauce. Too much sauce, too much juice. Too much juice, too much sauce. Too much sauce, too much juice.
Well, listen, I've got Dean. I'm not going to say too much because, like, Dean and I already started the conversation. So we're going to have to back. We already started the conversation. We started the conversation. So, Dean, thank you.
Thank you
for coming. The last but not least, because we're going to get into it. So we know we're going to How long have we got? How long have we got?
We've got about 45 minutes.
45 minutes, because I'm being rubbish with time. So I'm going to try and keep to time. But Dean, do you just want to introduce yourself in just context? I'm not going to gas you up. I could gas you up, but I ain't going to, because I'm going to let you gas yourself.
Thank you.
Yeah, so you do it.
So I'm Dean Okai, the founder of ADPAC, but not the chair, because we don't need charismatic leaders. What I've done is put a team together of the brightest and best of us to represent us across every area of life. So be it economics, housing, health, media, in terms of doing an international audit of our owned media so that we can represent our messages cohesively. And also at the moment, I put together a training program for young men, which is about creating a generation of effective leadership called Manage. So you can find us on Instagram under Manage Leadership, which is for young men, African Caribbean young men, between 16 and 25, or ADPAC UK on Instagram, or the website adpac.net.
Okay, wicked. So we will share. I'm going to look at Toya to that. So at some point we'll share all that, Toy. Yeah, we'll do that. So we'll share all of that. So I'm trying to just context, I guess, why I wanted you here, because there's so many reasons why I wanted to talk to you. But as I said, I posted on LinkedIn about the fact that we were going to do this, and I said, I've been stalking you for a long time. You don't know I've been stalking you for a long time, but I have been stalking you for a long time, respectfully, of course. And I listened, so I've seen you do interviews on YouTube. I've seen the stuff that you write. I've seen your website stuff. And I'm thinking to myself, all right then. And then since I've taken myself on this path that I'm now on, have no idea where it will end up, but I am on this path. And I found myself revisiting some of the things that you said in word form and on the screen. And it's like my version of the penny has dropped with what you've been saying. And then even when we connected and you sent me some information about, now which did you send me first? No, it was before you did the program for your young black men. And I remember reading it thinking, oh my God, I'm not ready for this yet. I'm not ready. I'm not ready. So earlier, Camila and I had this whole conversation about, you know, how deep this social conditioning is. And one of the things that I reflect on is the fact that it was so deep for me. I was so fearful of engaging with what you're talking about, and we'll get into that, but I'm just contexting kind of where I am. But I was so fearful of engaging in that because I thought there isn't a space for black people to engage. I could not, in my mind, understand the parameters and understand what you're trying to do and the questions that you're asking, and therefore what you're building in terms of, I'm going to call it economic independence, and there's lots of that. I'm just going to wrap that term, and you can explain that. And I was thinking to myself, that feels a bit radical. And I was in my mind thinking, how can I carry on my corporate career, meaning even though I'm not in-house, like I'm outside trying to do, and I'm trying to flex and bend with all these white people over here that don't want to talk to me about race. Do you know what I mean? They're not interested in that. And I'm seeing what you're doing, and I'm feeling that, but then I'm going, oh no, I can't. And so I'm thinking, if I felt like that, how many other people feel like that, point one? And now I can do what the hell I want. I'm going to bring Dean onto listen, Dean, we're going to talk. Because I think other people have to hear what you have to say and our conversation. And then I hope they will go and look you up and respectfully stalk you like I did. And I hope that we want to get involved with the two things that you've got going on. And because I feel like you have been walking this path for such a long time. And I just feel like more people need to know of you, why you do what you do, and then maybe start to context what's going on today and why I think you and what you represent is really important. So that's my nice way of gassing you up, basically. Was that
God
good?
bless you.
Was that good? I felt like it was good. Lord have mercy, I felt like that was real good. So yeah, you can pick anything that I talk about and go.
In terms of the resilience, it's very hard being the first Indian over the hill when you know the cavalry is on the other side with guns. And that's more of a spiritual decision. I know every time I lost a business over the course of 26 years, I'd get a job for 6 months. And I decided in 2006, when I lost an office in Bishopsgate, I wasn't going to do that anymore. I made a decision that I was going to upskill and retrain myself. So I did that in web and graphic design, ran a business from home, went into the clothes business in Camden, and I would just start things as hobbies and monetize them. And that's the same way that Manage came about. I meet so many people. I said, as an individual, I'm not doing justice to my network, which is a living, breathing organism, where I introduce right-thinking people to right-thinking people. And then just between them, 8 hours a day, every day, found myself solving problems. So my cognitive problem-solving skills were going through the roof, just connecting people. And I said, that needs to be an institution. So me and my missus started out with something which was like a think tank called the Solution Room. We set up events. So we had an event called the Thursday Club. We ran it for 6 months in Brixton, 6 months in Tottenham, and saw between 100 and 200 people come out, whether it was raining, snowing, for economics, education, spirituality, all of these things that are at our core that we don't discuss, that people say aren't of interest to anybody. And when I got to our economic event in Brixton, I was late coming from the shop, and I couldn't get in to my own event because it was physically locked out by people. And it was raining. And it was the week before Christmas. And they spent money, it's not free.
So people should have been in their yard, really, because you know what? When it's raining at 8 in the morning, it's like, I'm in my house.
So it told me something. It told me about our need. Now, we'd built up a tribe online. And I said, if that is a nucleus of the tribe, how many people are passively involved in just watching? So then we record everything. I have several broadcast crews come down. Then I see how many people watch it. And I look at the comments. So I was aware that it was time for us to have an institution in the vein of Garveyism, but without charismatic leadership. As a democratic organization where we employ the best of the expertise for every department, but have a very strong chair, a treasurer with a very strong financial background, and a secretary with a legal background. So that as we come out the gate, it's too big to fail. And we don't want any room for the gaps because we already have a mistrust of each other. Outside of our mistrust of each other, our efforts are continually underdeveloped from outside. Because if we look at it as pragmatists, we live in a global race-based economy. And who would want to enable their competitors to compete? It's that simple. I've extrapolated my emotion from it. And if every community establishes themselves economically and all of their cultural observations will be respected by the host nation, Britain, which is how they see us as so-called ethnic minorities, as guests to their host nation, then it's incumbent upon us to exercise our interests. And everybody is obligated to uphold, promote, and preserve their culture. Because when you do that consistently, you receive the cultural capital, which we don't. Because we are the only set of people, we have a very unique history, and that's due to chattel slavery, that are conflicted about upholding, promoting, and preserving our interests.
So that's what I'm talking about.
Absolutely.
That's what I'm talking about.
But there's a reason, and it's because it is black, which means absolutely nothing. It's a complete social construct to keep you in a box, like that prison in Superman when they're in that glass box and couldn't move. But that glass prison doesn't actually mean anything. Because if you're of African origin, you actually come from something which is visible wherever we find ourselves in the diaspora. When guys are in the States and one of their brothers passes, they pour libation. Do they even realize the spiritual context of that and where it comes from? At the time that they embark upon it, they'll be exposed to it later on. But as they do it, they don't even realize the origins of that. It's just innate to us. And because so-called host nations can tell us that's too black, and we've been indoctrinated through their education systems, we're conflicted. Because the formula that is taught in school isn't freedom of expression and you're to be the brightest and best. It's fear, obey, conform. And when you follow that formula, you'll stay in the classroom. And then that formula is modified in a capitalist system to fear, obey, consume. Now the consumption will go some way to trying to fill the hole in your chest, which is unfillable. You can turn down the volume with purpose, but we do everything to distract you from your purpose that represents your interests that would drive you to a place of self-determination. You are much better dependent, fearful, because then you play the game and you're not such good competition.
You see why you're licking me down with this now, you see? But here's the thing, so if I had a £10 note for every message that I have received from a black person who's listened to my videos, who've listened to me talk, they've read some, you know, all of that, and they say to me, Shereen, I wish I could say what you're saying, like my version, my experience, right? And then I have very, very senior black people who tell me to keep going because I am able to do what they cannot. And they've got, on paper, insane jobs, insane opportunity. Forget coronavirus, like before then, like international, all of this stuff. In positions of what most of us would think of influence and power, but they don't have any. And then I'm thinking to myself, how much is where we are today is because we have stayed obedient?
Absolutely.
And I'm talking about myself, so, you know, before somebody's bound to go, I'm not being obedient, Shereen, I've been like living my life free as a bird. All right, that's your business. But I'm talking about me. How much is that? Because we've never, and I talked about this in a couple of the previous segments, right? We've never pushed really against that. When you look at, if an organisation was to treat you poorly, right, and you got them banged to rights, you got email evidence, you got this, you got this, you got this, they can still make it so difficult for you to even go through a legal process that is meant to protect you. So all they have to do is apply the pressure and you back off. Now, I'm not saying this isn't just a black people thing, but we are already oppressed from a societal perspective. So therefore, what that does, it's like Pavlov's dog, this psychology experience. We are conditioned that when the screws are twisted, we got to get back inside and sit down and be quiet. And to some extent, for me, it's heartbreaking to hear and to see people putting up with such appalling treatment that they have internalized that to an extent that they don't even feel like they're worthy to fight for themselves, because that's how I felt. And I would say to people, it's not like I sat here going, oh my God, woe is me. Because listen, if you look on the outside, I look good. Look at my LinkedIn profile. I look like my proverbial's on point. But that's not how I felt when I was ignored. That's not how I felt when I was passed over. But still sat there. Do you know what I mean? And then I tried to do my own thing, but I was still acting in the way I was still inside. And yes, I use the phrase inside in every sense that we might use the phrase inside. That's how I felt. But I was still looking for this, and I was still conditioned by the same thing. So I wasn't even thinking really for me to go and do myself, because I thought I didn't have the nous. I wasn't capable. I'm bright. You know, I can teach myself stuff. I've got these qualifications, I've got 2 degrees, I can do this stuff, but not really.
Yeah.
And then I get pushed to this point, if screw it, and then it's almost like I'm a baby learning how to walk. That's been my journey over the last 5 months. Stepping into my power. It doesn't matter that other people don't recognise it. I didn't do it for that. That's about how I feel.
It's not for optics.
It's not for optics. It's about how I feel when I wake up in the morning. And I go and do what I do. And I go, Shereen, you're where you're meant to be.
Absolutely.
Forget how everybody's attacking me. Forget how who's not talking. Forget that. You're where you're meant to be. And I just think to myself, you know, how much more change can we force and push if we stepped into our own power? But we didn't have to do it in the way that I had. I had to experience trauma. I had to see George Floyd. I had to see the video of Amy Cooper to get to that point. Why do we need to get to that point to get to that point? Do you understand what I'm saying? And that's the thing. It's like we shouldn't have to, as a people, broken and trodden on, to wake up in every literal sense. But we also shouldn't have to be people broken and trodden on for the white majority to pay attention. I struggle with both of those things. Do you know what I mean?
But it works, unfortunately, for the white majority, because even if you have human empathy, it economically benefits you where we aren't competing. Look, resources are finite, roles within corporations are finite, so we're all competing. So it benefits you. And then even in terms of your own peers, as you heard from the panel previously, it doesn't even make sense amongst your own peers for you to rock the boat. And herein lies the problem with us. We grow to a level and then we have too much to lose. You're defending a 60 grand income, you're defending a 100 grand income on a 800,000 £1 million mortgage, your children are in education, so what do you do? And the internal questions aren't being answered. Look, we can distract ourselves as much as we like. I can go to a bar and get as wet as I like, but I've got to return back to me at some point, and that's the sickening feeling. What we need to deconstruct is the architecture of power.
Right.
If you jump into the river, you're not going to beat the current. The current, like currency, money, is the power. You're going to go in the same direction. It's unavoidable. The only way for you to beat the current is to create a vehicle that can carry you in the opposite direction. So there's 2 types of vehicle. If you're rowing, it's sweat equity, where you rely on the expertise and intellectual capital of the collective. The other way is to put a motor on the boat, and that requires capital, which largely we don't have. So we fall to the sweat equity model. And, you know, to put it simply, umbrellas don't make it rain. However, umbrellas protect you from the falling water. ADPAC is an umbrella organization. I say to all of those experts, if they want somewhere to hide, come and hide your expertise in ADPAC, because there's a role. The gentleman who spoke earlier about the LGBTQ plus community was very clear about their economic power, buying. And when you bring that collective economic power together, is such a force, is such a tidal wave to compete with. It behooves you to behave, to pass legislation, because this economic might is now brought through a sales funnel, and like that hose that can cut through glass or cut through wood or cut through stone, is very powerful, amalgamated in one place.
Right.
So this is our thing. Now, we don't think that we're worth money. As a small business owner, you say, I'm not worth money like that.
Yeah.
As an employee, it's just an understanding of regulations and rules, God's law, common law, legislative law. Now, we live down here in the lowly place of the great unwashed, legislative law. When we do that, we operate as willing and complicit participants in our own enslavement. Now, as a charitable ongoing concern and working within trust, common law, we can extrapolate our entire taxable income as corporations by donating to a trust. We don't own buildings. We're begging everybody, well, sit down with your financial advisor, figure out what would be taxable income. If you don't make it as profit, it can't be taxed because you've donated it. And from there, in trust, based on our constitution, we purchase commercial freeholds to convert into schools, chambers of commerce, and community centres where we uphold, promote, and preserve our cultural values so that we accomplish the cultural capital off the back of that. So no matter, you find the most racist Englishman in the country, he doesn't have any qualms about taking 10 of his friends on a Saturday night and going to an Indian restaurant, wrongly using the P term, but spending £1,000 as a collective. When that piano goes ping, the Indian restaurant owner has won. Now, the reason they realize the cultural capital is because they fully uphold, promote, and preserve their culture through language, through religious observation. I'll just call it spiritual observation at this point. Through their films, food, until it becomes a mainstay. Unfortunately, because we're very confident in promoting it amongst ourselves and celebrating it, and get shy when we get on the other side because it's too black, as opposed to being too African, too Chinese, too Indian, or too, because there's no landmass. So we become effectively non-domicile, but being fully domicile as Africans, because everything around being African, we've been taught to be ashamed of. So when you see poverty porn, you'll use that picture of, which has nothing to do with the current state of Africa. We're not talking about rural villages now. We're talking about a rich continent.
Even black people, we won't go there because we're thinking everybody looks like the starving kids that we've used to seeing on the TV on, what was that? Not like Comic Relief, but you know, all of them ones.
Children in Need.
Yeah, all of that. So even if you're sat in your house thinking about exploring your roots, so to speak, because you might have watched Alex Haley's Roots, literally on VHS, right? But then,
which is all trauma-based, though, incidentally. Which is a problem.
Which is a problem. And you've heard me talk about the fact that I struggle, right? But when we talk about the black experience in a collective historical phrase, we only talk about that.
Yes.
And the problem is with that, as I've recognised, is it anchors you in that trauma base, but it also anchors you in every literal sense. Like, I don't want to go back to the plantation field, but how I feel, I'm still living on the plantation field.
Absolutely, 110%.
There's just no corn.
And
I'm picking cotton of a different version, literally. And people go, oh my God, Shereen, you're so happy. That's how I feel.
But it's not different. It's actually the same. And here is what happened on smart plantation owners' fields. They'd invite in an expert. Slavery's over. You can do what you like. But it doesn't make sense to go crazy because it won't be sustainable. You don't really have expertise in the economics, so leave him in charge of that. And if you go wild and you party and you don't turn up to work, then it's not going to work. You won't be able to make the money. So you're all shareholders. You guys own it, and you're stakeholders within this plantation. Now, what I did is I just removed the whip and the problem and kept you in exactly the same state and you believed. The difference is now you work harder because you comprehend that you're a stakeholder, but you're working for exactly the same plantation owner. That is all we've evolved into. There are guys who will work for a company and when they're talking to me, they're saying, do you know what we're doing in our company? And I'm looking at them. And you're telling me about a corporation that is hundreds of millions, Fortune 500 company, as if you own it.
Listen, could we talk about this ownership piece for a minute? So I don't know, and this is for anybody who wants to go and look this up, because I think he makes this point really clear, even in his anger. Joe Budden did a podcast a few weeks ago talking about the fact that he turned down a Spotify deal, right? And Charlemagne the God was like, you're a fool, because why did you turn down the deal? I urge anyone who is black to please go and watch this podcast and listen to what he had. Like, he was vexed. Oh my God, he was cussing down the place. But within the cussing down the place, he had some very, very valid points. And what he was saying is, and I'm going to use this as an example. Thank you, David, for sharing this clip with me, because he sent me the clip. He's like, you're ready to watch this. And the point that he was making is, listen, you can make as much money as you want, but if you don't own anything, you are beholden to that. So if you've been doing this for all of this time and you don't own anything, get equity, go back to them, but you don't, because we get collectively gassed up from that point of view. Do you know what, even though I thought like I'm on the journey, even that was a bit of a wake-up call for me too, if I'm really honest, because I'm thinking, what is that about ownership? How many senior black people take positions within companies when they don't get equity? And sometimes we don't even ask because we assume we can't get equity. But somebody who does not look like us has had equity offered on the table right there, because I know I've done the employment contracts. And I've looked at it and thought, hang on a minute, how is it they're getting that? But then when we do get it, we're so grateful to have gotten the piece of paper in the first place. We don't even question the figures. We don't question the percentages. We don't question the payout clauses. We don't question what is force majeure. So what is the circumstances where an organisation is not going to pay out on that? So we just get gassed again because somebody's put on paper something that actually doesn't mean anything.
Nothing at all.
It means nothing. Yet I see people trapped by versions of this piece of paper within organisations. And that doesn't also, an organisation go, well, it is what it is. I'm like, no, but that is I would not want that in my organisation. I would not want people working for me who are waiting for this piece of paper to materialise into money. But that's all I can say.
Well, look, we're also obligated to educate ourselves in the structures of our industries. And if you're a senior expert in any particular discipline, you should understand contracts. And you should also have a high value proposition of yourself, because nobody's hiring you if they don't have a high value proposition of you. When it comes to ownership, if I talk about Nipsey Hussle, there were things that he understood, but as an Ethiopian, he was uniquely tapped into, as an African American, his Africanness. And in seeing those who came before, who become corporate slaves, because if I advance you money, that means I own your intellectual property. That means I can shelve your material. If I can shelve your material and everything is wrapped around licenses and you don't understand the nature of licenses, you can't even go and perform your own material, which means I can lock you down. Why, if I had that high value proposition of myself, would I embroil myself in that kind of rich slavery where economically you've been afforded a start, but don't actually realize that's the anchor that's going to trap you, which is what you see with American footballers, you see it with basketball players, where they're told unceremoniously, be quiet, shut up and dribble, and you will fear, obey, and conform, because they do make spectacular examples of those who don't conform, which is what happened with Colin Kaepernick. Now, the part where he fought and he got a legal payout And then based on the energy of the Black Lives Matter movement, which shouldn't be conflated with the Black Lives Matter organization,
Yes.
got the Nike commercial. And that was something that has paid him out, what will last him for the rest of his life, and also enabled him to become a philanthropist.
Yeah.
But there has to be an intrinsic understanding of your value proposition in order to go down that rabbit hole. And the vast majority of us don't, because the way that we've been indoctrinated is to say that we're less than. Even our parents reaffirm you've got to be twice as good. And that is what brought about the managed leadership, which is entrepreneurial and civic leadership in tandem, because we're only going to get to that place where we've got too much to lose and the civic leadership part will never arrive.
Well, I've been told we got shut up because we've gone over time. I don't even know how it's possible because I feel like we just started. Does it feel, like, does it feel like we just started? It feels like we've just started. So I'm going to ask you a question and put you on the spot. Will you come back and talk to me?
Absolutely.
Because I've got about 5 million things I want to talk to you about. So yeah, I'm not even going to start because I could ask you something else and then we're going to be here and I'm going to get told off.
Absolutely.
So I'm just going to say thank you.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. And this is it. So we finished the live show almost. Don't go anywhere for like 10 minutes. So we're going to get, Stacey is going to play us a few little tunes. Then we are going to come back very briefly for a couple of minutes and say our goodbyes as a team, because it wasn't just me who put this on. And if I can, before they cut the screen and chop me off, I just want to say thank you for listening. Those of you who did the marathon 5 hours, the crazy people. Yes, those will do that. Yeah.
If you want to get Toy and Jay.
Yeah. Just bring it. Sorry, I'm being told. Bring everybody. Yeah, but they're going to wrap up. So thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Thank you for supporting. And I guess, all I want to say is that we can all affect ripples in very different ways. There is a lot of work to be done. Different individuals will have different type of work to be done, but that should not stop us from going to do the work. So, as always, lean into those uncomfortable conversations, and I'll be back. I'm doing another live next week. I've got more lives coming up. If you like this one, I might do another version of this. You have to let me know if you like this one and we'll do it.